So everyone's favorite psychopath, Art the Clown, is back in Miles County, and this time he's spreading Christmas cheer along with blood and fear to all of the residents. Let's have a little fun talking clown chaos, shall we? Terrifier 3 picks up right where Terrifier 2 left off after the Miles County massacre on Halloween night involving Santa and her family. Art the Clown is back, bigger and bloodier than ever. It's supposed to be a Christmas movie. Let's just address the elephant in the room. You know, the concerns you guys have, all of the questions. Does it live up to the expectations? Is it as bloody? Is it as brutal? Is the screening thing hoax? Like, you know, when people walked out, they were puking. You've heard all the rhetoric. And I will say, I totally understand if somebody walked out of this film. It's fucking disgusting. It's also kind of fun, but that doesn't mean it is not the most extreme by far. In fact, I would say this movie's probably 10 times as gory and as extreme as number 2. And we've all seen that film, and we've heard the rhetoric around that one. We've seen the bedroom scene. I think there might be about 5 scenes in this movie that are more disgusting and more over-the-top violent than that one. So, you know, it's time to ask yourself a question. Are you somebody who got dragged to see this film? Are you somebody hanging on by a thread? Is this film not for you? Were you just here for the lore? You barely made it past number 2? It's time to have those serious questions, because if you're one of those people, it might be time to check out when it comes to Terrifier, because this one is way over the top compared to the other two. A little bit surprised, honestly. This movie's not NC-17. It has some of the most extreme gore I've ever seen on a big screen. You know, months ago, we all saw that teaser and trailer, and we were all speculating, making theories where this one was going to go, how it was going to be so extreme, why people weren't marketing this movie, they wouldn't fund it. And I have to say, within 10 minutes, you're going to know if you can stomach this movie, if it's a movie for you, because where it chooses to go, I totally understand if people walked out of the theater, because it goes places no movie dares to go, takes chances, it's over the top, disgusting. But yeah, again, just to reiterate, it might be time to check your fandom at the door and question, are you just a gore hound? Are you here for the lore? Like, why are you still with this franchise? Because it's getting a little bit extreme. But at the same time, it's also a little bit more fun, and it feels a little bit more traditional in the way they set up the kills in this one. As I said, huge kills, bigger than the bedroom scene. There's about 5 or so in this movie. Highly memorable, disgusting kills if that's what you're in these movies for. But it feels a bit more traditional in the way they set this up in the form of set pieces. Like, they're really building towards these kills. They're trying to make them bigger and better and more memorable. With the other 2 movies, they felt a little bit more random. Don't get me wrong, there's plenty of volume in this third film where you're going to see a kill every 5 or 10 minutes, and it's going to be disgusting. But it feels like they tried to get a little bit more creative, and they tried to make this a little bit more traditional, as I said, where there's bigger set pieces. You know a kill's coming, you know who's going to die, and it's a big elaborate setup to get to that kill. So it feels a little bit bigger and bolder, if that makes sense. It is kind of funny though, because people who watch this franchise, it is very extreme, but it also kind of creeps up on you. You know, like when I watched the first one, I thought it was pretty gory, over the top. And now at this point, I've just become desensitized. It's gotten to the point it's absolutely comical how far they're willing to go. So it's kind of like the more of these movies you watch and the more times you rewatch them, and the more into this franchise, we're at number 3 now, it just feels like you're almost getting less extreme because we're just used to what these movies are now. The mastermind behind that brutality, Art the Clown, returns to this one as well, and he's just weirder and quirkier, and he's more funny, and he's just more comedic moments. You find yourself laughing where you're not supposed to in this one. David Howard Thornton just continues to elevate this character and just add a layer to this guy with his like weird mannerisms and subtle eye movements that just gives this guy a personality even though he doesn't talk, which makes his mannerisms funny and what he does funny, even though it's so over the top disgusting you shouldn't want to look at it. But at the same time, it's kind of a bad car crash. You just want to watch the way this guy destroys and mutilates people because it comes off in a kind of over the top comical way. I don't know how they managed to land it. They do find that balance where a lot of franchises, the longer they go on, kind of fail, where it never goes full cartoon. Art is still scary. He finds people, he fucks them up. So you never really get to that point where the late stage of Nightmare on Elm Street Freddy Krueger got, where he's just a full-on comedian. It's still scary. He still destroys people, and you know he means business. So I think that's a good balance they continue to land. We also need to talk about my girl Sienna, played by LaVera. Now, she was my favorite part of number 2. That's actually where I think this franchise started to win me over, and I got on board with it. Number 1, that was my biggest issue I had. We had no characters to root for, no stakes at play, just kills for the sake of kills. But in number 2, we meet Sienna, we get our final girl. A lot of depth to this character, you know, lore, world building surrounding her, played by LaVera, phenomenal actress, born for this role. It also helps I have the biggest crush ever on this woman. The fact that she acknowledged my existence on Twitter, further proof of a god. But in all seriousness, I love the way this character is written and acted. We don't get this type of final girl in horror very often, if ever. I absolutely love the layers and the evolution of her character we're starting to get, and they're building on movie over movie. You know, she's dealing with survivor's guilt from number 2, losing her friends and family, dealing with anxiety, PTSD, panic attacks, but also the physical aftermath of all of this. She's bruised, battered, scarred physically. She fought him hand to hand. She barely lived, but she's She's also taken on this motherly role, trying to keep Jonathan safe, her niece Gabby. She takes the fight to Art the Clown. She'll do anything to keep her family safe. She is that protector from her dad's comics. She's just a very likable character. She's very smart. She's instinctive. She follows her instincts. It's very important you have her in a movie like this. She's basically pure good when Art the Clown is pure evil. You need that contrast. In a movie this demented, this dark, this bloody, this savage, you need that light at the end of the tunnel. You need something of hope to cling to as a viewer that can overcome this darkness. I think Sienna is just an amazing final girl. She might be my favorite final girl ever if this continues. I fucking love this character. I also found the style of this movie to be reverting back to number 1 a lot more, where it felt like it was a lot more grindhousey than number 2. Number 2 had that kind of cartoony feel to it, like it was a fever dream. This movie really plays like a tale of two halves. The first half of the movie feels like number 1. Second half of the movie feels like number 2. So based on the tone of the movie you prefer in a Terrifier movie, that's the half of the movie you'll probably like the most. I'm somebody who prefers a little bit more lighthearted tone to these movies, even though these bludgeoning and dismembering bodies. I like that quirkiness where they lean into the fun of Art the Clown more than just pure brutality. Because the first half of this movie, I was kind of on the fence. That's kind of what it felt like. They were doing that. They were being brutal just for the sake of one-upping the previous film. Had to give those fans carnage candy, those people who are here pure gore hounds. They want their extreme kills. For the second half of the movie, when it gets to be Christmas time and he's meeting Santa and he has a bag of presents and he's just leaning into all of the weird, quirky elements that make Art the Clown fun, even though he is very demented, that's when I started having a real blast with this film. So I really liked the second half of this film a lot more than the first. I thought this movie did a pretty good job when it comes to starting to answer some of the questions of lore that they introduced in number 2, and there was a lot of it, you know. We're starting to meet Sienna's dad in the form of flashbacks. We're starting to understand this entity that brought back and controls Art the Clown. We meet Victoria again. She's back in this one. We're getting questions about the demon, the pale white girl, but it's not confusing, you know. They give you little tidbits. They don't give you anything super satisfying. I'm sure we'll get it eventually, but it's not done in a way where you're just super frustrated and you're like, what's the point of all of this? It's just infatuating. Like, I want to know more. Like, I'm intrigued by the story. I never thought I would say that about the Terrifier lore of all the franchises, but I cannot wait to see where they go with this. I am infatuated with what they're going to say. I'm super into this world. I would spend 10 movies in it. I just think we have a ton of places we could go with this lore, so I am on board with whatever they choose to do. I just have to commend these guys. They could have really shooed it in. They could have used this as a cash grab. They could have just struck when the iron was hot with Art the Clown. Pure NC-17 gore fest, which it kind of is still, but there's lore. They're trying to make a unique story to this. They're making a memorable final girl. They're trying to make a story that's pretty unique in horror films. For that reason, I just have to commend them once again. I think they could have easily shoot it in. They could have just given us nothing but kills, but they're really trying to make something memorable. There's also a ton of horror Easter eggs in this movie, callbacks to Halloween 2, Black Christmas, The Shining. It's like a horror movie fanatics utopia watching all of the callbacks in this. I cannot say enough how surprised I am at the lore of this franchise, the heart these movies have, how they've managed to stay true to themselves as a low-budget franchise while giving the fans exactly what they want time and time again. I never thought in my lifetime I would ever live to see what we're seeing now with this franchise. I truly didn't. You know, we have Art the Clown, an all-time horror legend. It feels like it's teleported me right back to the 70s and 80s. Freddy Krueger, Michael Myers, now we have Art the Clown in 2024. I never thought I would see that. You know, the way horror has chosen to go, elevated horror, supernatural horror. We just don't do slashers anymore. Society's constantly offended by everything. They're just afraid of everything. People don't like to be challenged anymore. People don't like to see films that are controversial. We got it on the big screen. I don't know how we did, but this is a movement I will always support. As somebody who's a horror fanatic, who has this YouTube channel, who is a cinema nerd, who loves the way films are made, it's hard to not get a little bit emotional, honestly. I just love the success of this franchise. But overall, guys, this movie is more of the same. If you hated the other two movies in this franchise, you will despise this one. But if you love this franchise like me, you like old school grindhouse 70s 80s B horror films, over the top gore, but we're starting to get some explanation of lore. One of my favorite, if not my favorite, final girls ever in Sienna, played by Lauren LaVera. This is a franchise that I never thought I would be so on board with, but this is another movie I will probably revisit annually around Christmas. It is fucking disgusting, but disgusting in a way I loved it. So I don't know. This movie was awesome for me. So any of you guys who have seen number 3, comment down below. Let me know if you think it's as extreme of a step up from number 2 as I did. And let me know if you maybe want a full-on spoiler review of this. If we get enough traction, maybe I'll make a whole separate video about this lore. If you haven't subscribed already, join me down below. But that's all I got in this video. Peace.